Hi, everyone. I'm very glad to start this webinar and to join all of you in this discussion. My name is Maria Repko. I am Deputy Director for the Center for Economic Strategy. This is Kiev-based economic policy think tank. And what we would like to talk about today is the bilateral and multilateral relationships of Ukraine with its neighboring countries, which is immensely important during the times of war and also during the times of the European integration. Wartime support from our neighbors has been and continues to be of enormous value, and we remain deeply grateful for it. At the same time, we know that European countries, our neighbors, increasingly see Ukraine not just a country at war, but as a large neighboring market, sometimes also market rival for the other markets, a source of labor, source of human capital, partner in manufacturing, logistics, and also future member of the European Union, which I would say changes the situation compared to what we had previously. Public and political debates in neighboring countries are sometimes really shadowed by concerns of different origins. And that is why we tried to gather today with us the experts from Central and Eastern European countries to ask them these questions, to explore how Ukraine and its relations with Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Czech Republic, how can we mutually benefit from deepening the economic cooperation, from deepening our connections in the context of war, in the context of future recovery, and Ukraine's future accession to the European Union. Some housekeeping issues. We are in Zoom now. The translation is available to Ukrainian language. Отже, якщо ви хочете слухати цей івент українською, то, будь ласка, увімкніть функцію перекладу на нижній панелі Zoom, і ви будете слухати його українською. А робоча мова у нас сьогодні англійська. Our working language today is English. For us. This discussion is produced with the support of the Ascolten Dear Fund and as a part of the Strong Civil Society of Ukraine, driver towards reform and democracy project implemented by Sarjednanya and funded by Norway and Sweden. Our gratitude to these countries. The content of this publication is sole responsibility for the Center for Economic Strategy and can in no way be taken or reflect the views of the government of Norway, government of Sweden, and the Sarjednanya. Here, this is the end of the housekeeping issues, and I do hope to go to our agenda. So first, we will have the presentation from my colleague Yana Ohrimenko, and then I will introduce the participants of our roundtable discussion. Yana, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Vyacheslav. So today we will briefly present the results on our elaboration studies on mutual economic ties between Ukraine and our close neighbors. So the 5 neighboring EU economies, we talk about Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania, form Ukraine's regional economic corridor and some kind of platform for the further integration to the EU single market. So since the beginning of full-scale Russian invasion in 2022, economic ties have intensified substantially, and there were many reasons behind this, such as reconfiguration of trade routes, energy interdependence, migration flows, and more importantly, reconstruction cooperation. There is an emerging regional economic system which links Ukrainian industrial clusters, which continue operating in spite of war, EU manufacturing supply chains, and reconstruction investment flows. And we would like to underline 3 structural features of this regional partnership, which include supply chain integration, in particular in automotive industry, metallurgy, agri-food, and electronics, logistics corridor to the EU, which includes rail, roads, Danube ports, and energy interconnections. And last but not least, human capital mobility, because there are over 2 million of Ukrainians living in these countries. Next slide, please. So to begin with the free movement of people, one of 4 fundamental freedoms in the European Union, migration is becoming one of the key drivers of regional economic integration between Ukraine and its neighbors. First of all, there was a large diaspora present even before 2022, and there was a substantial inflow of refugees since 2022. Importantly, employment rates among Ukrainian refugees in neighboring countries are pretty high, close to 70% in those countries. Ukrainians contribute positively to host economies, and there is solid economic evidence for this. For instance, Ukrainian refugees contributed substantially to GDP growth in Poland. In Slovakia, they make substantial contributions to state budget through taxes and other contributions. Ukrainian diaspora facilitates entrepreneurship and business ties. There are many businesses in Poland, Slovakia, Romania, and Czechia, which were opened by Ukrainians since 2022. And since a substantial number of refugees plan to return, they have a potential of bringing back skills and capital gained in the European labor markets. Next slide, please. When we talk about free movement of goods, first of all, and the obvious thing is that trade has intensified a lot since 2022. But since we discuss European statistics here, there were 2 reasons why it intensified so much with our neighbors. First of all, there was indeed the redirection of trade and higher volumes of exchange between Ukraine and neighboring economies. But also those economies serve as transportation hubs for Ukrainian goods, which is also reflected in the statistics. When we talk about particular countries, obviously Poland is a regional leader, showing the biggest increase in the total volume of international trade in goods with Ukraine. But the same increase, although to a smaller extent, is observed in Czechia, Romania, and Slovakia. Next slide, please. Ukraine is becoming a strategic supplier for Central European industrial supply chains, which is reflected by the structure of Ukrainian export to those countries. Here we talk about goods essential for metallurgy, such as iron ore, steel products, but also we talk about more high-tech production. For instance, Ukraine supply parts for automotive industry in Czechia, and this cooperation continues in spite of war. Overall, trade increasingly reflects vertical specialization, so there is some evidence of emerging local production clusters. And we see that expanding joint production in sectors such as automotive components, metallurgy, food processing, defense manufacturing, and energy infrastructure could transform Ukraine from mere supplier to a fully integrated part of industrial production in Central Europe. Next slide, please. The war also accelerated Ukraine's integration to the regional trade in services. First of all, those 5 neighboring economies we are discussing today run a consistent surplus in services trade with Ukraine. So actually this trade is very beneficial for the balance of payments in Central Europe. There are several reasons why it surged so much in 2022. First of all, it's about logistics because wartime disruption of Black Sea roads redirected Ukrainian trade through EU land corridors, which was reflected by the higher volume of trade and services. Migration significantly boosted recorded service export because spending by Ukrainian refugees in host countries increased demand for housing, retail, and tourism services, which is reflected in official statistics. EU neighbors became important service hubs for Ukraine. Poland, Romania, Czechia, Hungary provided logistics, telecom, and IT services to support rerouted trade flows and displaced Ukrainian firms. And overall, services increasingly reflect regional supply chain integration, some evidence we observed before when we discussed key trends in international trade in goods. Next slide, please. Surprisingly, regional capital links with Ukraine remained in place during the war, in spite of some substantial changes in structure. Obviously, here Poland is the regional leader, and interestingly, Hungary is just on the second place by the FDI stock in Ukraine. So investment currently concentrates in logistics, finance, and reconstruction-related sectors. For instance, key sectors include transport, energy, infrastructure, construction, IT, and professional services. For now, border regions. Here, obviously, we talk about western border of Ukraine and central regions are considered relatively safer for business operations, so they attract the most of new investment from abroad, including neighboring EU economies. Our neighbors are important investors and reconstruction partners, so there is a substantial footprint of investors from those countries in let's say, their business presence in areas which are related to recovery and reconstruction in Ukraine. War shifted investment towards strategic sectors such as defense, energy security, logistics, and infrastructure. Interestingly, we observe some Ukrainian defense tech firms investing in EU neighboring economies. So actually there is some demand for defense services Ukraine can provide surely nowadays. And we believe that further integration to the European Union could unlock larger capital flows to Ukraine. But this would require regulatory alignment and lower risk premiums that might enable investment scaling and deeper supply chain integration. Next slide, please. So we definitely see more opportunities for economic cooperation ahead. Even now, strategic economic interdependence, the extent of it is quite substantial. We see that economic ties between Ukraine and neighboring EU countries have deepened since 2022, and factors such as war-driven trade rerouting, migration, development of logistics corridors have contributed to it. Neighboring countries have become key gateway between Ukraine and the EU single market, since they play an important role in logistics services provision, energy supply, and industrial cooperation. Cross-border value chains are emerging in several strategic sectors, notably in metallurgy, automotive components, agri-food processing, logistics, and defense-related industries. What comes next? So we believe that developing transport and logistics corridors could definitely help. So this includes further expansion of rail, road, port, and energy interconnections, uh, scaling industrial cooperation and co-production, particularly in those services where it's already present. Again, automotive supply chains, metallurgy, defense technologies, green energy, agri-food processing. We could leverage migration and labor mobility since Ukrainian diaspora can support entrepreneurship, investment, and skill transfers between EU and Ukraine. Investment partnerships for reconstruction should be furtherly promoted. They are already being, but there is definitely space for further scaling. And obviously, but this is probably the task on our side, accelerate regulatory alignment with the EU single market, since we believe that harmonization of standards should facilitate deeper integration of goods, services, and capital. Next slide, please. So that's all. You are welcome to get familiar with our studies for other EU economies. At this point, not all of them are ready, but we are working on this. So you can check more using this QR code. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Jana, for this presentation. And indeed, as many of you already know, this study and this meeting is a part of a bigger project where we at CES are trying to connect and to know more about what Ukraine is doing and what it could possibly be doing in future with our European Union colleagues, with the other member states, with our partners. So now we would go to the round table part of our meeting, and I already see the question in Q&A. Yes, we are sharing this presentation. I think that Vyacheslav has already shared the link in the chat. So yes, please download it and use it, and also please visit our website for more information about Ukraine's bilateral relationships with each of the member states, which we have already covered, and there will be more, as Jana said. And with this, I encourage you to put more questions into Q&A, more questions to the chat, to our presenter, and to panelists, which I am happy to meet and to present to you now. So today we have with us Pavel Havlicek. He's a research fellow at the Prague-based Association for International Affairs, Czech Republic. We have with us Yulia Korotya. She is a Transatlantic Security Program Coordinator at Warsaw Office of the German Marshall Fund of the United States, Poland. Valery Kravets, South and Wider Europe Program Coordinator, Black Sea Regional Office, GMF, Romania. Wojciech Przybylski, he's editor-in-chief of Visegrad Insight and the president of the Respublika Foundation in Warsaw, Poland. Ivan Miklas, president of MESA 10 and member of the supervisory board of the Center for Economic Strategy. Hi, Ivan, nice to see you with us, Slovakia. Jan Strzelecki, Jan is a deputy head of the World Economy Team in Polish Economic Institute, Poland. And last but not the least, Jan Maruszynec, executive director of MESA 10 Slovakia. So the next 45 minutes, the next 30 minutes, I'm sorry, would be structured around 3 thematic blocks, 10 minutes per each block. The perception of Ukraine in neighboring economies, narratives, opportunities, concerns, growth opportunities. The second block is growth opportunities, win-win cooperation, sectors that we see for practical cooperation and joint partnerships. And the third block is sensitive issues, bottlenecks, sectoral concerns, some challenges. Actually, maybe you know what, let me just use my role as a moderator and switch the second and the third block places, because I would love to end with the growth opportunities and not with the challenges. And maybe let's also have 15 minutes per each block so that we are not in a hurry, and then we could take your questions as they arise. So please be active, please post them in chat. And let me start then with my first block, the perception. So the situation as of now, perception of Ukrainian neighboring economies. What are the main narratives? What are you talking about? What are you thinking about when you hear the word Ukraine? And here I would ask Yulia Kurotya maybe to start with Poland. Yulia, the floor is yours, and like 3 minutes so that we let everyone to paint the picture.
Thank you, Maria. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, 3 minutes. Okay, I will try to be as brief as possible. So we have, of course, the difference between the official evidence and between the societal perception, and I will try to explain it now. So the overall evidence so far suggests that the economic impact of Ukrainians in Poland has been largely positive because the arrival of Ukrainians has helped Poland to address already pre-existing labor shortages in sectors such as services, logistics, manufacturing, healthcare. And many refugees entered the labor market relatively quickly, which supported economic activity and tax revenues at a time when Polish economy was already facing demographic constraints and a shrinking workforce. At the same time, we have here localized pressures, and they're not usually in the labor market itself, but rather in competition for the public services, housing, education systems. And we observe this mostly in large cities in Poland. And that's why because we have here many reports which confirm how beneficial Ukrainians are to Poland. For instance, this famous 2025 report by the Polish Development Bank, which confirmed that Ukrainians in Poland pay more in taxes and social contributions than the value of benefits they receive from the state. But this data has done little to alleviate the social anxieties at the local level, exactly like when we have these anxieties about the competition for medical services, for housing, etc. So yes, a lot of things to unpack here. So, and I will let my other colleagues speak.
Yeah, colleagues, please just raise your hands and you will have the floor. For me, anyone who wants to add something, some color from your country, how is Ukraine perceived? Pavel, please.
Thank you so much, Maria. Dziękuję. Greetings from Czechia. I wanted to complement the picture because it very much fits some of the patterns that we see in Czechia. Indeed, there is quite a discrepancy at the societal level perception and how the current government in place since autumn is actually positioning on Ukraine. So these are two different things, and actually I'm very grateful for this kind of picture and take, which prioritizes the economic level of cooperation, because this is really something practical, and at the governmental level, this is really something that is very tangible, and everybody from the country's leadership nowadays actually listens to this very much and understands the opportunity for our future cooperation, despite the fact that the current government is indeed very different in its general positioning on Ukraine, and we see much more of turbulences, much more of criticism, and indeed also a lot of change to the previous government that was in power since autumn until autumn last year, which was very much heavy on supporting Ukraine and doing so much actually to indeed provide all necessary type of support, humanitarian development, reconstruction, and indeed also very significantly also the military one, including the Czech Ammunition Initiative. So coming back to the societal level, indeed there's a similar position to what Yulia was mentioning, that despite some of the facts that Ukrainian refugees coming to the country, and you know probably that Czechia has been the highest per capita country recipient of Ukraine refugees. Overall, in absolute numbers, it was more than 500,000 of Ukraine citizens receiving the temporary protection from Czechia, to compare with 10.5 million of the overall population. So the population is actually increasing thanks to the migration from Ukraine, despite the negative saldo overall from the country perspective. So that is one, and of course this is very much reflecting on the country's economic performance, which has led the country to economic growth. Now for this year, it's for the past year it was around 2.5%. Despite, for example, the slowing German economic model in which Czechia is very much interconnected. So here we see that there is a lot of things that from which Czechia is benefiting. This is also reflected on the absolute numbers of Ukraine refugees contributing much more than they are receiving. Julia spoke about that in the Polish context. Very much the same case in Czechia, and until recently the data was collected and very much publicly communicated to also disperse some of the grievances that exist indeed at the societal level. So this is also very much present. Finally, if you let me share one more thought, this is indeed for the future country's prosperity. This is also indeed very much interconnected with Ukraine. If there was a recent bigger picture look at what are the country's economic sectors that are bringing the country's prosperity, and these are essentially two. This is defense and security, and this very much in connection with Ukraine. The number one businessman is now owner of the Czechoslovak group, Mr. Sternad, who has been very much involved in this Czech ammunition initiative. You will not be surprised by that. And the second sector is indeed related to green technologies and sustainability. So these are two prominent sectors, both connected to the results of the ongoing Russian aggression against Ukraine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pavel, and also to illustrate a little bit maybe the situation between Czech Republic and Ukraine. Now we at Center of Economic Strategy, one of our founders and the head of our supervisory board is a Czech national, Tomáš Fiala. So yes, and Ivan is the other founding father. And I would be happy to give the floor to him. But first, Jan Strzelecki, Poland, and then Ivan Miklas, then Valery. But guys, let us just pass to the second round, the second question. After Valery, I close this topic, unless we have any questions from the audience.
Sure. So, I have only short maybe remark, because I very much agree with what Julia Korotia said about Polish scene. But I would like to add that there is a broad understanding within the political elites, but within the society also, that the Poland's security and development prospects, including the prosperity of the society, are and will remain a function very much connected of the situation of the countries in of the Eastern Europe, especially developments in Ukraine, and that the Ukraine defeat in the war against the Russian aggressor will have terrifying results for Poland, including war breaking out between Russia and Poland. So this is the main issue. These economic issues are the second, for me, the most interesting one. But this is the second level of the public thinking about Ukraine. So we are very much in what's going on the front line, and financial economic issues are more and more present in the public sphere, but they are not, I would say, dominating it. Only in this sphere of social services, which are somehow politically sensitive, and some sectors which we will discuss later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Ivan, please, the floor is yours, and then Valery.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding perception, in every important and sensitive political issue, there is difference between reality and perception of reality. Of course, in this area, it is the same. Slovakia, unfortunately, has the at least by Globsec public opinion research, the highest level of people who are anti-systemic, pro-Russian, pro-conspiracy, they're usually the same people. And unfortunately, we have now government which represents this part of society. And it was very different till autumn 23. Till that time, we had another government which was very supportive to Ukraine, which means perception is divided, of course, and unfortunately, Slovakia and Hungary are now represented by the governments which are very pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian. But mostly, I think this is because they understand, at least current coalition parties understand that they have only voters they have among these anti-systemic parties, and they're competing each other how to gain this support. But majority of people, I think also public opinions confirm it, that are supportive to Ukraine, and also understand that it is win-win cooperation, and that even now, at this situation and this very unfortunate political situation, Slovakia and Slovak economy is profiting from the cooperation. It was, by the way, explained in your presentation of your colleague. But very good example is export of munition. Despite of rhetorics of the government that no munition to Ukraine, last year production of weapons and munition was doubled in Slovakia. The value is 2.5 billion euro. And majority of this export, I think, I don't know how much exactly, but I'm sure that it will be more than 90%, even more than 90% of this export is export of munition and weapons to Ukraine, which is of course very good and very important in this regard. And last point, which I want to stress, is that even by public opinion polls, and this is very important, the support of current coalition is very slowly, but still decreasing. And we hope that till after next election next year, also this official position of Slovakia will be changed in this regards.
So it seems to me, thank you, Ivan, and it seems to me that in Czechia and Slovakia, the situation actually, if not similar, but at least some parallels could be found here.
Not fully parallels, unfortunately, because Babiš's government is, of course, less supportive than it was Fiala's government, but still I see significant difference between
of course.
current Czech and current Slovak government.
Okay, yeah. Then Valery, Romania. How are things going here?
Hi. If you're talking about perception of Ukraine, I want to highlight perception gap actually in Romania-Ukraine relationship. Back in 2022, I worked with first wave of Ukrainian refugees in Romania. And what hits me most, almost 80% never have been to Romania. Not just not visited, they don't really know what Romania is. They knew the name on the map, but that's all. Same apply for Romanian side. It's like blind spot. Comparing to Poland, we see huge difference. Polish products selling in Ukraine for almost 20 years successfully. Polish brand is everywhere. And what about Romanian products in Ukraine? Almost none, even now. And if we go into numbers, we see Polish direct investment in Ukraine, it's almost 1 billion euros. And for Romania, it is modest, like 30 million. And we have over 600 kilometers of shared border and non-existent economic ties, like at all. Both market became like other does not exist. And this is, from my perspective, is not normal when economic of this side, like EU member and EU candidate, behaves this. And to address and to expand our Romanian-Ukraine relationship, we should to address firstly this mindset gap. It is problem number one. Before we go into trades number, before we go into infrastructure, you simply can't build partnership with a neighbor you don't even see.
Yeah, it's, I mean, part of the answer to this issue to me is maybe cooperation over forestry, because I know that we have a vast border, but almost all of it is just Carpathian forest. It's this very wild parts where there are really no roads or border crossings. It is very interesting, and thank you for your perspective. And also, I just want to advertise the lady has written the great article together with Tess we published on Romanian-Ukrainian relationships, and also what was maybe I know not that obvious even for Ukrainians is the level of Romanian help and associate like what Romania have done for Ukraine during this first years of the invasion. Okay, Wojciech, I see your hand as well. Maybe let's comment really shortly on that question, and then we would go to the other one, which is on challenges. Okay, so would you like to comment on this one, or it will be the second one?
Yes, in a way, I think that my contribution is already adding to the question of challenges, and I will start by asserting that it's in both economic and political debate. The utmost importance is to keep the Ukrainian state and Ukrainian economy afloat. And the objective is crystal clear, and it's motivated also to some extent. We're only gradually learning by our self-interest, economic self-interest. The strategic self-interest is self-evident in Poland, but the economic interest is being debated. I think my colleagues already mentioned, and in the presentation you did that economic debates of 2022, and these are shifting landscapes. 2022 were about Ukrainian migrant workforce. There was filling and already a big gap and big need on the Polish market. That is going in 2026, 2025, 2026 into new territories of seeing it also as a challenge. I'm happy to discuss that in a moment. The other shifting landscape in economic debates is that in 2022, Poland was unsure about Ukraine future success, economic success, joining the European Union. Also because it looked at the potential leapfrogging of Ukraine and plugging into more efficient and cleaner value chains within Europe, bypassing Poland. But that debate in the business circles, in the investor circles was, and also economic policy circles, has been, in my view, sidelined. No one does that. And gradually, also thanks to the publications of the Polish Institute of Economic Institute and many others, slowly and not quickly enough, in my opinion, we are having a debate about the prospects of Polish exports to Ukraine, which, as they are growing in also other domains than even Miklos mentioned, but also the military relevant domains, specifically food, agriculture, also amenities for housing. These products are propelling Polish exports to a significant extent. However, Polish debate, and I think overall Central Eastern European debate, and here comes the challenge in my opinion, is not able to strategically position business circles, investor circles in our countries in a driver's seat for saying that future Ukraine EU accession and a single market will benefit those circles, those groups, and regional investors. And that is in stark contrast to what we have observed before 2004 expansion, enlargement with our countries joining EU, in a mirror looking at German or Austrian investors and business circles who have been perceiving the enlargement at that time as a clear opportunity. To my mind, and that I will stop at this point, there is virtually no business association basically across Europe that has done a proper due diligence. Maybe Swedish have started, of what it means, and is it, to what extent it is also in their interest in specific sectors of the business, but also business for a country, countrywide. What does it mean for Ukraine to join the future, the European project, the single market? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? I think to a large extent, this is a big need for research and for addressing this, coming also from the point of view of perceptions and debates that are economic and business debates, investors debates, and especially in Central Eastern Europe, because these debates are not happening, and investors, at least in Poland, primarily when asked about potential investment in Ukraine, they're turning away and they're looking for safer spots, even if not as potentially profitable. And they look to the Western European countries and economies rather than Ukraine, which would be otherwise, in my opinion, natural instinct.
Yeah, thank you. And with this, you indeed have opened the section on challenges. And as we all know, the European Union has to vote, like all the member states of the European Union have to vote in favor of Ukraine being a new member and in favor of enlargement. So each of your country would be asked the question whether you want Ukraine as a member state or not. And it brings me to the question of where may the future negotiations with your country face resistance from your perspective? What would be the, I don't know, one or two, let's just maybe limited by two major resistant points in bilateral relationships, which are crucial to address before we start these negotiations? And I see hand from Yulia and also from Pavel and from Wojciech. That was the old hand. Yulia, please go on.
Thank you, Maria. I just wanted to echo on what Wojciech said. And especially because recently we had talks with with Polish businesses who are like also worried about potential EU accession. And the main concern that we heard was not the competition itself. Like if you're talking about the potential scenario when Ukraine is already somehow is joining the EU market, like in the form of EU integration or any other form where where Ukraine has the same rights as the EU members. And the main concern was that it's not the competition. They said we can compete, it's fine. We are worried about non-equal treatment. We are worried about the fact that Ukraine, as a, I don't know, let's say as a war survivor, will come here on some special conditions, and that we will be not able to compete because of this. So that was the main concern which I heard, and also what Wojciech said, that it's still it's been hard for them to articulate the benefits for themselves from Ukraine entering the market. So, and I feel like that's also a task of the government to explain this. But yes.
Yeah, that's true. That would be interesting discussion. Pavel, please, then Valery.
Thank you so much, Maria. A couple of things, and with one, I will go back to Wojtek's points regarding the safety or not of the investments. Indeed, this is, of course, a huge burden, and here, of course, the ongoing debate about the insurance and giving some kind of protection to the investment. It's indeed a very relevant one. Of course, we know that EU is developing this kind of instrument, for example, within the Ukraine facility and the pillar number 2. We also know that the national development banks are those institutions that are supposed to play a very important role in this respect. So this indeed would be one of the points which is limiting some kind of additional potential and investments, for example, from the Czech side. We see that very, very clearly. The ongoing war efforts, it's a big elephant in the room. Indeed, we need to single it out. But regarding the two challenges that you ask about, Maria, I will first mention one, which is a very negative one. But I'm afraid that we will still hear about that, and this is regarding the very low Czech support to enlargement. This is actually the lowest. I think this is really the lowest among all EU member states. Indeed, this is what we actually saw from the latest Eurobarometer. This is indeed related to the traditional Czech Euroscepticism. This is again reflected in here. And, the cake that we don't want to share with anybody else, we are already dissatisfied with the whole EU business. This is a traditional phenomena in the Czech politics and society. And here it is further reflected also vis-a-vis the partners. So the Czech society is indeed not really developing very well in that regard. And what we see is that unfortunately this is also projected on our partners, Ukraine included. So here this is a very important landmark in our context, and indeed something that will be unfortunately, and I'm very very afraid that we will see more of that soon, will be abused by politicians. Indeed, by Andrej Babiš, who is a populist in his political life and career, and we see that unfortunately he's very much following the public mood in that regard. So we that is one. But of course, and I hope we will hear more of that. From colleagues from Poland, but also neighboring countries. Of course, again, one of the things that will not be too surprising to you is indeed the competition element, namely reflected in agriculture. Again, if I draw the point back to the Prime Minister himself, him being a person involved in this domain, agribusiness, also the chemical part of the agriculture protection and so on. So this is all in his domain, and to see more of this kind of competition will be definitely something that he will not like to see. There has been already some protest against Ukraine closer integration in the agriculture sector, much less than in Poland or neighboring Slovakia, but it is visible, it is pronounced. In the Czech domain, there is much less, for example, in the so-called cabotage, and they call it in Polish, the transport sector. There is much less, since we are not strictly speaking a neighboring country to Ukraine. But indeed, this might be another point. But the bigger one, of course, is the overall skepticism towards enlargement policy in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavel. We will see what would be said about enlargement policy in the next polls when we have maybe somewhat different situation with the global in the global geopolitical arena with Iran and the US and all of that, right? So now we just have 10 minutes left. So on the negative side, I would ask Valery maybe just really quickly go through these two negative the factors that might cloud Ukraine-Romania relationships, and then I would ask each of you to please reflect on the opportunities and growth factors. So Valery, please, two things that are threats.
Okay, I will skip part with the Ukrainian grain in Romania, but I will go to hottest point in Romania. It is not so economic one, but the hottest point here, it is Romanian minority and language of Romanian language in Ukraine. Верховна Rada passed amendment on Romanian language question late in 2025. It was good step, but it can be like one-time thing, because in Romania, this felt very personal. For example, I have several colleagues who is deeply pro-Ukrainian, and then they support Ukraine from the day first. But all time they knew something about another Romanian language school is closing in Ukraine. They literally burn up. And main problems that Ukrainian reaction for this, it is silence. And this is really kills trust. What Ukraine can actually do here, keep cross-border cooperation more easy, protect the right of Romanian community to study in their language, even it is clashed with Ukrainizational logic, which is also important, but this is matter here. Not because Romania demands it, because without this trust, everything else gets harder. Defense cooperation, EU accession support, infrastructure investment, hard to sell to water. And here we bring it brings us to obvious parallel with Hungary. Ukraine should take this seriously. Romanian mainstream parties is still pro-European and pro-NATO, but populist and sovereignist like our and South Romania hold already about a third of parliament, and they use all of this to win votes. And if Ukraine doesn't work on this now, for sure, bad actors keep weaponizing these bilateral tensions, and Romania can become more harder partner, not because logic changed, because the politics won't allow it. And I know that it's mostly political point, yes, but it comes from real economic problem and all tensions, and both sides need to deal with it before it gets worse.
Yeah, that's true. Valeria, let's just quickly give me one positive opportunity growth point that you see in relationships for Ukraine and Romania, and then I would go to the other.
Easy. Romania, in their mindset, already became like a logistical hub for Ukraine reconstruction. Not only reconstruction, Ukrainian transformation. They're building this huge 77 billion road to Ukrainian border to halve the time from Ukrainian border to Bucharest. They expand vertical gas corridor. They expand this Bucharest-Chisinau-Odessa trilateral format, so we can use it and we can build new economic system, new economic paradigm here in that part of region based on this infrastructure and this trust.
This sounds to me like the infrastructural miracle indeed. That's very good. Next hand, Wojciech, and then Jan.
Yes, very quickly. It also reflects on some of the previous points, so very, very quick points. Agriculture, I see it as a challenge, as Pavel said, but only if Ukraine will want direct payments. And I think I would turn the table here. What sort of solutions Ukraine can bring? What is the added value that Ukrainians in Ukraine and Ukrainians can articulate and propose as a solution, as an added value, the benefit of their enlargement to respective countries? That, I think, is a very important framing of the debate. Not the only one that will solve all our problems, but something that is definitely missing. And I think in this sense, there is an opportunity to, and also kudos to your efforts to actually demonstrate the existing links. But the effort needs to come directly from Ukrainians putting these offers and opportunities on the table. And I think this is a great room for improvement and opportunity. Also, why? This needs to take into account from the Polish perspective that we're dealing not so much with, like in many other countries, but not all, but with SMEs, primarily companies that have a perception of Ukraine, partly true, but partly also stereotypical, of a country where you cannot do honest business on an SME level because of corruption practices. So the clear opportunity, the lowest hanging fruit in a way, and I know the Ukrainian society supports it greatly, is to establish the common standards, fundamentals that are in the name not of some big ideals, but of making stable and honest business. Because Polish SMEs mostly, especially those inherited and from the 90s, built and inherited from the 90s, have experienced all the corruption malpractice that we have went through, and they simply are discouraged from a potential of going through the same, I won't use the non-parliamentary word again. So they don't want to do it, but I think if Ukraine can demonstrate this is an opportunity, it can also show how they can be part of this added value for themselves and for Ukraine. And I would close on this because everything else will just flourish, because Ukraine and Ukrainians with their entrepreneurship, agility, and also already demonstrated cases of how many businesses have been thriving, and you've shown that also in your study. It's just business miracles waiting to be seen.
Thank you, Wojciech. Jan.
Thank you. I would like to concentrate on trade and say that there is not so much places in the structure of Polish export and of the export of the all countries of the region that very overlap with Ukrainian exports. So I wouldn't say that there will be big competition in trade, and maybe I will use this opportunity to also to show you some results from our report, which has very similar title to our today's debate. So win-win for Ukraine and Central Europe, the economic implications of Ukraine accession to EU, and we applied their GTAP modeling. So we try to see how the trade flows will look like after the EU accession of Ukraine. And the positive outcome is that we have good positive results for Ukraine as well as for all countries of the region. So we have added growth for all countries. For Ukraine, is obviously the results are the most positive. It is 26% more GDP after the accessions. For our countries this is less than 0.5% even, but for all of them is positive. So I wouldn't say that there will be, but obviously there are some sectors which are somehow specific, and here agriculture is of course in trade of goods, sensitive sector, but in terms of services it is transport and IT services for Poland, for example. For Romania there are some more goods sectors, but what it is, I think, also here could be discussed with the Ukrainian side, that this GTAP modeling shows that these effects of EU integration of Ukraine are depend of the peace Ukraine converge with other EU countries. So if we because we use some scenarios, and in the best scenarios for Ukraine, when the productivity growth is the biggest, reforms are really taking place, and productivity growth is big. The results for other countries is also quite good. So here I would say that these things of the preparation, reforms, and also level playing fields, which was also already mentioned, to moderate those sensitive issues, also to allow investments in Ukraine from the countries of the Central Europe are crucial.
Mr. Jan, could you please link your research into chat? I think that not just me, but a lot of our participants today might be interested. So please just share it in the chat or share it with us, and we will share it. Thank you so much. I see Ivan hand.
Yeah, just two things, because speak about challenges. There are a lot of challenges, of course, but I think there are two most important challenges. First one is, of course, safety, but not only safety in connection with investment trade, in the problems connected with the war, but also because this is mostly not directly in the hands of Ukrainian government, how and when war will be finished, but also safety by property right protection, which means corruption, rule of law, and everything connected with this. This is one very important potential bottleneck, challenge, or potential problem. Another one is, on the side of current EU members, and it is political will and political leadership to accept Ukrainian membership. Because what is the problem? Problem is that benefits of the the integration, Ukrainian integration, are evident for every expert economist. It is clear, but they are not so visible as potential problems connected with this. For instance, trade with agriculture, trade, and others, and so on. And also, let's say, a lack of property right protection, for instance, and rule of law on the Ukrainian side, which means it will be another very important precondition. Will be strong enough leadership, let's say, on the side of current European Union countries to understand this potential, and despite of risk, political risk connected with this, to push and to support this enlargement, because it is again, as I said, because the benefits are not so visible and politically, let's say, beneficial, like potential costs are politically risky. And this regard, it will be really important to have this will also on the side of current EU countries, and not to do mistakes on the Ukrainian side to strengthen this, let's say, negative perception, potential negative perception. Which means finally political preconditions will be the most important, and all other things like agriculture, trade, and so on is just not so important if these two most important preconditions are fulfilled.
Yeah, and I will get back to you just after Jan for your perception of the opportunities, or how to maybe change challenges into opportunities. And while you think of it, Jan, please, Jan Marushinec, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce Ivan's point of view that the political leadership and acceptance in the EU will be quite crucial. I came across recently, I think the Finnish president in the Munich conference said that the EU might change its approach to enlargement and actually grant the membership to Ukraine possibly straight away, and only after that start to negotiate about the chapters, which might be an interesting case. So declare the political will to integrate straight away and only grant the benefits of the integration when the chapters are fulfilled and negotiated successfully. So that might be an interesting change in approach to enlargement.
Yeah, but if I may to add, because this is interesting, of course, because we all see or at least feel that it could be really important and way how to speed up the necessary process. But at the same time, there are formal procedures and formal rules which are even not allowing us to start formal negotiations about chapters, about clusters, because Hungary is blocking this by veto, which means it seems to me that here also it will be necessary to change the approach, in this regard, that if we think, if European leaders understand that this is really priority, then it is necessary to have some informal approach of coalition of willing or something like that, or these EU6, the biggest, most influential countries, if they will agree on this, then for all other countries will be not such easy to blocking this, which means it is, I think, also Ukrainian EU membership could be a good area, not only this industrial policy and military cooperation and foreign policy, but also this, because this is a significant part of this, to find solutions how to avoid or diminish the risk of possibility of blocking all this process by one or two countries.
That is true. That is very true. Okay, my question to Ivan and to Pavel would be the positive sides and opportunities that Ukraine might bring to bilateral relationships with your country. What do you think of it, and how could you formulate that? And then after this, I will open the floor for the questions. And also, I see already Jana's hand, and then I encourage all of you to also maybe communicate with each other, ask your peers from the other countries maybe questions that you might be interested in. So Pavel, Ivan, could you please just briefly tell us what opportunities do you see, and then the Q&A will start.
Yeah, if I may start, I think because we can speak about particular areas like, for instance, Ukrainian experience in digitization, like other areas like competitiveness in agriculture and so on, so on. But what is the most important, I think, is not particular or concrete sectors, but the most important is that even opening markets itself and reconnection of these markets and creating better conditions for mutual cooperation, for investment, for trade are huge kind of potential, has huge potential for increasing economic growth on both sides. And especially if we are speaking about Ukraine. Ukraine at present, and not only even before war, before 22 full-scale war, Ukraine was maybe the most country which was the deepest under its potential, which means the space for high and sustainable economic growth was huge. Now it is even bigger because of potential of reconstruction and everything connected with this. Of course, if these preconditions of the safety will be fulfilled. And if this potential is there, and if these obstacles and barriers for the openness, for the mutual cooperation, trade, investment will be broken, then it is huge potential for growth on both sides. And it is not theory. It happened when our countries entered the European Union in 2004. And now I think even this potential is even bigger because the situation of the Ukrainian economy, which means problem is, of course, that not only war, and that we don't know when and how it will be finished, but also the change of the atmosphere and international rule and everything connected with this. And that's the reason why it is, which means I'm not speaking about particularly Slovakian opportunities for growth and cooperation. I have mentioned this military production, which is even now, even when we have very negative attitude of the Slovakian government, this cooperation is even growing in this regard. But I think if there is a real integration, and partially integration is going on, but if it is also formal integration, which will open doors much more, then I think it is huge potential for win-win, for mutually beneficial economic development and growth.
Thank you, Pavel. Do you have anything to add on the Czechia side?
Thank you. I want to definitely subscribe to what Ivan mentioned, and it's important, I think, to see the bigger picture there in terms of the integration and expanding of the space of prosperity and stability that on which we are so dependent in Central Europe, indeed, as neighboring countries to Ukraine or Eastern flank nations in a more general sense. So here, definitely, this is also what we try to capture back in 2022 when we were sort of approached by the Czech MFA to gather an argumentation list that then the MFA was using in its negotiations vis-a-vis other partners for speeding up the process of enlargement. You might recall that in the second half of 2022, Czechia had the EU presidency, which was very much opening and forthcoming in this respect. Also when reaching out to other partners to do this together. So I was very proud that we could contribute to that, and the arguments that we gathered were very much along the lines of what Ivan mentioned. So indeed, the impact for bilateral trade, I already and sort of relations in terms of the positive development we already spoke about, but indeed there is much bigger picture for the whole of Europe, and I very much also liked what I think Jan shared from the Polish Economic Institute point of view, and here the analysis that the Czech government, the previous government has done are very much similar to that, actually, and we need to do more just last year, Czechia came up with a non-paper that it distributed among the member states for closer integration, economic integration, and removing more barriers to trade and bilateral exchange between the EU and Ukraine and EU and Moldova. So there are still opportunities to go much further. And I think it's very important that we go in this gradual way. And for example, that on the 1st of January, Ukraine became part of this roaming zone and so on. So that's very, very important. It's very practical at the same time. But indeed, we can go much further. If you like, we do have those materials available. I'm happy to share those as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that is true. We are able and willing to go further and in more than just one sector, and we do hope that it will happen someday. And I also sincerely hope that Ukraine will become part of the European Union. Once I met a person, analyst from Croatia, it was 2015, I think, and the Ukraine has just signed the association agreement. And this person, he said that he spent literally half of his life, he was in his 40s, literally half of his life to bring Croatia to become the member of the European Union. At the time, we didn't think that Ukraine will have to go through war and through all these hardships to prove that it is actually deserving this place and to become a candidate. The war should have started, but I hope that we will see this during our lifetimes, and we will witness this before any other major catastrophe happens. So now I open the floor to questions and encourage all our participants, please put your questions into the chat and to Q&A. We have a lot of great panelists here with us today, and also panelists, please do the same, just if you're interested in your fellow opinions. And the first question will come from Jana. Jana, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I have 3 questions. Actually, I'm not sure whether I should ask them sequentially or just throw them at once. But anyways, let's start with the first one. So word agriculture sounded so many times, I didn't count. But actually, I have a question for the experts. So our Vice Prime Minister Taras Kachka believes that any issues can be resolved when it comes to Ukrainian agriculture, and that we can find such a solution that none of European farmers would feel threatened by Ukrainian agricultural holdings. And actually, my question sounds like this: what should be done at the side of Ukraine in order to, bring this question out from the agenda, to make sure that agriculture is not perceived as a threat associated with Ukraine joining the European Union?
Let's maybe start with agriculture and then go to the other questions, if anyone is ready to comment. Maybe Poland. Anyone from Poland is ready to comment?
Well, I can maybe add one thing, that this is I think a lot to do is on Polish side, or on the not on the Ukrainian side, but on the side of the other countries of the region, to transform our economies to include the Ukrainian enterprises in the value chains, and that's what's really concentrate more on proceed food or proceeding food, not on the raw materials. To use Ukrainian raw materials to also benefit from the value chains. It is relevant for Poland, but for other countries as well. Where I see the possible bottlenecks and problems, it is also the discussion about European funds after the accession, because the agriculture policy and the cohesion funds are under big discussions, and here this is the thing which it is hard to imagine how it can look when Ukraine enters the EU. So I would say that there is more to do on our side to transform our economy, but on the Ukrainian side, it is also on adopting standards and norms which are in EU, but actually in the agriculture it is the situation is not so bad. It is relevant, for example, for other sensitive sector, which is transport, where the level of preparedness of Ukraine to EU accession is among the lowest. And that's why we have, for example, it is easy to use by political groups to protest against the enlargement, liberalizing of trade in services, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I see Pavel also wants to comment on agriculture.
I think Jan was before me, but yeah, I can then step in.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Jan, please.
Okay, no problem. Just very briefly, we should also look at the big picture, not only to be afraid of the competition from Ukraine, but if Ukraine enters the European market, the food security of the whole Europe will be much stronger. So maybe we should also contribute with this kind of look. And food security, if I was looking at opinion polls, is considered one of the main risk or perceptual attributes of the Slovak population. They value this very highly, and I guess this is the same for other European countries. We somehow lost connection with a lot of colleagues.
I think we might have lost Maria for a bit. But nevertheless, I might actually continue briefly before she comes back, if you can hear me myself. So just wanted to add on the top of what Jan mentioned, definitely subscribe to this. The specificity of the Czech situation is indeed that in this country, in this context, we are not so much focused, generally speaking, on the agriculture production. That is more the case for definitely Poland, mostly probably also Slovakia, whereas in our case is the industrial output that is the leading one. So indeed, this is where the government also attention is going, and it's the industrial sector that we briefly touched upon in the defense realm, energy, transport as well. That is also very significant in relations with Ukraine. With Jana Ochrimenko, we wrote about that actually, and we also spoke about the already existing bilateral ties. We already have around 4 to 5 joint ventures in the defense domain between Czech and Ukrainian companies. This is very significant, also production that is based in Ukraine. So this is definitely the most forthcoming sector. In other respects, also, it's mostly the industrial sector actually driving the debate, whereas on the other hand, agriculture is not the most significant. I can see that Maria is back. I was trying to buy you some time, Maria, with my intervention. I hope I didn't take so much time, and you're back finally. Thank you so much. Just wanted to end here.
Yeah, thanks for that. And sorry, I just lost connection for a moment. I see Wojciech's hand and I see Jana's hand. I don't know if Wojciech has already spoken about the agri, or was it the old hand? Or okay, it was the old hand.
Yeah, no, it's a new hand.
New one. Okay, yeah. So go on, please.
Very briefly, I think, agricultural topic can be solved partly. It will never be fully solved. But on one hand, I would strongly propose, I think that Ukraine is also in an advantageous situation because of it does not need direct payments. But the big topic and the big promise of participation in the EU for specific people in agriculture sector were direct payments. Polish farmers are still not receiving the amounts that the French farmers are receiving, for instance. So we're not, after several years of already quite a lot, the direct payments, which are the element of otherwise, I think, dysfunctional common agriculture policy, but still it involves certain trade-offs and benefits. They are not equalized. What Ukrainians could potentially communicate, prepare, is that keep your direct payments. We will not want direct payments, for instance. So I would say it's one of the solutions, but the other solutions also need to come from the European Commission and from the European Union itself, because there will be challenges to particular economically insignificant but politically sensitive voter groups, and also large enough voter groups to matter, which do not use the Ferrari tractors to protest in Brussels, but they are picking up mushrooms and selling these mushrooms and whatever, raspberries, and they have legitimate concerns about how their lives would be changing. And a certain transition mechanism must be considered to ease this. But speaking of the joint opportunity and potential, I think that the European Union is now in discussion on the next multi-annual financial framework, and is also shifting from the narrative of cohesion to the narrative of innovation and economic resilience, economic security. And in this domain, under, for instance, Connecting Europe, what is it? Connecting Europe facility, I think that's in the next multi-annual financial framework, a plan of over 80 billion euro, which is more than doubling the existing fund. Projects like already Romanian colleagues were talking about it, connecting simply energy and infrastructure networks, but also building new and innovating the new necessary toolkit for energy security, energy storage, data centers, data hubs, the cooperation that is needed and can reinforce all across Central Eastern Europe under the 3Cs initiative, among others, connecting this, using the existing framework in this domain, and generating as many good ideas and proposals as possible to be in competition with everyone else for the same money. That is a potential of the also to talk about and to plan in a diligent way, actually already.
Yeah, thank you very much. I see Jana's hand for the other question, and I also see the question from the audience. Can I ask Slava if you could just add Jakub to panelists so that he could ask his questions directly, and while you're working on that, maybe Jana go on with your next question.
Yes, so Wojciech mentioned that we need to elaborate on what we can provide for the European Union when we join the European Union, and I would say that very common, some kind of folk rhetorics in Ukraine, at least among people I communicate with, is that we can contribute to strategic autonomy, and we can contribute a lot to defense capacity of the European Union, especially when it comes to our close EU neighbors. However, this is only a valid point if Russian threat is perceived as something real and very, very potential in your countries. So my question is whether it is perceived as something real, important, and dangerous, and so whether this kind of image to sell to the European Union actually makes sense. So this is what I'm genuinely interested in, because I do not know.
Okay, anyone wants to take this? I see Ivan.
Yeah, I think it definitely has sense. I think very good evidence is that now even US and other countries asked the Ukraine to help with the safety against Iranian drones, which means it is a very good example how world is interconnected and how Ukrainian capacity and also experience, because nobody, unfortunately, of course, but finally, no other country has such kind of experience now, and with this, with new technologies, using these new technologies in battlefield, which means in this regard, and what we can say, we don't know how will be future of not only in Europe but global international rules and so on. But it seems to be that we will never fully return to the period which just ended in last years, and now it is clear, which means in this regard, even importance of this is increasing, every day increasing, which means now I think even people who didn't understand this or who didn't recognize this importance understood that it is really important. It will be even more important.
True. Pavel, please.
Thanks, Maria. Very much agree with what has been said on a bigger picture. Unfortunately, and I mentioned that the realities in the individual member states are changing. And let me once again come to the Czech perception. We had 5, then 4-party government previously, which was very much on this line, sharing the threat perception of Russia commonly and unequivocally. Now we are in a situation that there's a 3-party government in which one is blatantly overlooking this, looking at domestic affairs. Another one, the MAGA camp, is probably giving some credit to the Russia threat, but definitely not sort of prioritizing this. And the third government party member is indeed looking more at the Ukraine threat than the Russia threat. So this is actually where we are. This is the world we are living in now in the Czech Republic. So unfortunately, the picture is also changing. We see, and it will be very important, how the Hungarian parliamentary elections will result. There are also other countries having discussions about that. In Slovenia, upcoming parliamentary elections in the coming weeks or two. So this is not a static picture, and it develops over time in individual member states. Unfortunately, not always for better, but in general, I definitely would say yes, it is a good strategy, Jana, and we know that it is very much reciprocated and prioritized by the Commission. Just earlier this week, we, in a run-up to an event in the European Parliament that we are running on how to better support Ukraine in 2026 on the 25th of March in European Parliament, we were coordinating with the European Commission, people that are working on the Ukraine facility, just recently speaking about extending the opportunity for mutual investment, also from the Ukraine facility, also in the dual use technology. So we see that there is new interest, there is more appetite from the European institutions, from the European Commission for sure, very much followed by a number of member states. But what I try to say is that this is not a static picture. Ukraine also needs to invest in cultivate relations with these individual countries, and indeed, it needs to be followed somehow. We see that the picture is changing, and there is more and more fatigue in some of the European societies, unfortunately. Thank you.
And this is something we would have to overcome somehow to succeed in that. Wojciech, would you like to come in? And then I think Jakub has already joined the panelists, so I will give the floor to him. It was the old hand, was it? Or okay, Jakub, please come in. Then I know you have a question. Unfortunately, I missed it while I was offline. So.
Okay, hi. My name is Jakub Mareš. I'm from the Czech Ministry of Industry and Trade, and I have one question on panelists. I see that our rhetoric, or our minister or ministry, is slowly shifting from the unconditional support of Ukraine, which was characteristic to previous Fiala government, to a policy of support of Ukraine, which is more based on mutual economic benefits, for example, for Czech exporters or Czech investors. And with this in mind, I would like to ask whether the lower support for Ukraine or directly anti-Ukrainian rhetoric of some governments, for example, Slovak government or some politicians like Polish President Nawrocki is reflected in the level of economic cooperation of these countries with Ukraine. If it's like interconnected or it's running independently on of each other.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I can also mention that if you want to comment on any aspect of Ukraine's relationships with Czechia, then you are also more than welcome. I think I will also ask Jana to comment on this question later, because I think that we have some trade data, especially for agriculture, and after the restrictions. But first, Julia's hand was first, and then Jan. Julia, please go on.
Yeah, I will try to be brief. Thank you, Jakub, for this question. Well, for Poland, I feel like political rhetoric here and economic cooperation do not fully move together. They are interconnected, of course, but and it is true that the political rhetoric has shifted, and everybody now is talking about more interest-based cooperation, which is actually also quite a sober approach. But this hasn't slowed economic cooperation with Ukraine. I would say even to the contrary, with each year we see this acceleration. And I must also say that if you're talking about Polish businesses, they generally operate more independently. So yes.
Yeah, please, Jan, go ahead.
Yeah, for Slovakia, I would say it depends. As Ivan already mentioned, in certain sectors, the cooperation, despite the rhetoric of the government, is going quite well or even increasing. Some other sectors are affected by this, and I would point towards the energy sector, and especially the flows of gas and oil to Slovakia through the Družba pipeline, which were stopped due to the damage inflicted on the pipeline. And also the rhetoric of our government to stop electricity supplies to Ukraine. Fortunately, this was not stopped completely, because this is like the biggest export article currently. But certain measures were taken to lower the supply. So I would say that sometimes it really doesn't affect the real politics, but sometimes it does, and it's quite unfortunate that this is the case. Yeah.
That is true. It does affect real world politics and policies, I would say, and the trade as well, and businesses as well. I don't know if Jana is ready to comment. I think that Ukraine has a lot smaller flow of grains, for example, and I think that it's connected with the protests of farmers and the political use of these protests by governments in Poland, in Bulgaria, in Hungary, and the other countries. Effectively, we were almost prohibited from exporting to these countries. Also, European Union opened for Ukraine really beneficial terms in trade, which were then cancelled at some point. Again, let me maybe ask my colleagues to step in here if they have more details. Last year, I think this benefits for Ukraine that were lifted, that were provided by the European Union for Ukrainian trade. Also, one of the most, I think, painful things for Ukrainian companies is CBAM, which concerns metallurgy. This is the special tax which Ukrainian metal producers are now to also endure, even despite, like everyone knows that Ukraine has much less CO2 now production than it was before the war. So, but yeah, still, I think that in the real world, it actually is challenging, and we also can see that this political situation is very challenging for Ukraine now, when we are in the waiting of the 90 billion euros that the European Commission was going to provide as a loan, and that is now blocked by Hungary because of the trade issue with the Družba naftoprovod oil pipeline. If there are any other questions, colleagues, I encourage you, I encourage you, or comments or questions, encourage you to post them or to raise your hands. if you want, or are ready to comment on any other topic. Otherwise, I would just welcome any last remarks from participants, and we will be closing this discussion. Okay, then I see. Okay, no questions that I see. I see Yana is commenting to me that 5 countries has prohibited the Ukrainian the goods in 2023. Actually, that was what happened. I guess Pavel's hand. Okay, Yana, could you please come in on this express prohibition, and then maybe Pavel, and then we will be closing.
Yeah, I mean, very briefly, since you have mentioned this already. So those were 5 countries. This also included Bulgaria, the one country which which we have not invited today. But actually, we had this ATM prolongation until last year. It was finally over. So there are no autonomous trade measures in place anymore. But instead, we finally have new terms of DCFTA, Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement. So something which had to be done in 2021, but wasn't done due to obvious reasons. So we are better than we used to be before 2022. So new terms are more beneficial, but we are definitely worse off compared to 2023, 2024, when ATMs were in place. So the situation is kind of ambiguous right now.
Okay, thank you for this, Yana, and Pavel, please comment.
Thank you so much, Maria. Maybe a brief questions to colleagues from especially Slovakia, Poland. We don't have Hungary, if I'm not mistaken, today, which might be a pity, actually. Will be interesting to have a discussion.
We're unable to. We tried to reach out so that there is no doubt. We tried to reach out to some of Hungarian colleagues, but because of elections, political situation there is kind of.
As usual, that's right. Yeah, always isolating themselves. That's right. So I just wanted to come back to this sphere of energy. I think it was you, Jan, who spoke about the kind of missing income from the minimizing of the cooperation in the energy sphere. We know that there was a lot of back and forth actually on this. And a lot of political rhetoric also involved in this. So I just wanted to actually go back to this and ask about the sort of the real impact on economic performance of the country. We know that there is both the issue of the transition fees, but also potentially the exports of some of these commodities, including electricity. So if you could tell us a little bit more about what it does to the economy of Slovakia, and maybe to colleagues also in Poland. I know that there was also an attempt to compensate some of the sort of political blockades by partially Slovakia and definitely Hungary not to export certain commodities, energy commodities. So if that actually happened, and what kind of impact did this had actually on the country's economies, if even being able to evaluate these short-term changes. Thank you.
Ivan, Jan, if you want to comment.
Ivan will be probably more knowledgeable on this topic, but I will try just a very brief answer. So basically, Slovakia relied on the transitional period and still imported Russian oil. In our refinery Slovnaft, which is located in Bratislava, this was the main source of production of petrol and so on. And this situation is not very favorable, I would say. So the Slovak government really is upset that the flows have stopped, and unfortunately they try to blame it on the Ukrainian side, that the progress on repairing the Druzhba pipeline are not so fast. And there are some retaliatory measures taken. But fortunately, though, the retaliatory measures were discussed in public, that we will stop the flow of electricity towards Ukraine, but this didn't happen. And only very partially some kind of reserve electricity capacities were blocked. But, well, I don't have much more information on this, but it was only very limited countermeasure?
Yeah, I will just add that regarding oil from Russia, now government released the strategic reserves, which should be enough till August, which means it is enough oil now for Slovnaft, and it is possible to import Slovnaft through Adria. The Croatian minister said that only if it will be no Russian oil, but other oil. Regarding this prohibition of the export of Slovakian electricity, it doesn't have a real economic impact because it is first Fico announced it, but it was not done because it was necessary to have formal approval of the government. And more than 1 week later, government approved it or passed this cancelling, but it is only emergency supply, which in the past I think just short term 2 times was delivered when it was really absolute shortage of electricity in Ukraine, and this of course will be possible to replace from other countries, which means in reality export of electricity continues, and there is no direct economic impact, but of course the political damage and image damage is here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for these answers and for your questions and for your active participation. I see no hands, and I might still give some time to see the other hand. If there is one or the other question popping up in chat, no, there is none. So with this, I think I want to thank all of you who participated in this call today. This is super important for us to become closer to each of you as, I don't know, as a peer group on our level, on the level of the civil society, on the experts level, just to get to know your countries better, to get to know your thoughts better, the problems that you feel as relevant for you and which you feel should be also relevant for us. Personally, I heard a lot of details today that were very interesting and that I think deserve to be researched and published and talked about. And I thank all of you for this inputs, for this insights, for your collaboration and also for your support to my country, which is just priceless in times of war. And so I thank all of you. I thank our donors for making this possible. That's a Scotland India project and Isar Jednania and the governments of Sweden and Norway. And I wish all of you a quiet and calm and happy evening and support ZSU.
Yeah. Thank you and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Здравия, Мария.
Slava.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.